Hey students, I got something I wanted to teach you this morning. I had someone ask me a question in a class yesterday, and it was a good question. And so it made me think about just what the activity in chapter module 3, and maybe maybe you might not have heard about this before or what it is, but talking about a static website. And so I thought I would kind of show you the difference between a static and a dynamic website, and we could kind of talk through that theoretically, and you could maybe get some ideas about it. Uh, the when we think about, well, what is a website? What is a website? So the components of effectively or effective, a website is I have to have some code that my web browser processes. Okay, that's it. It's an HTML file, right? That's what I'm. When I ask for a website, I'm asking for an HTML file to be sent to my browser. And so, where I get that file from, it really doesn't matter, right? It could come from my local machine, it could come from my server, it can. I mean, obviously, if I'm asking for IBM's website, right, I want to get the one that they have. I don't want my own version of it, and I don't want a hacker's version of it. I want theirs. Okay. So naturally, if I ask for IBM's website, I'm going to go to IBM's web server to get their website. And so what's really happening is my browser is receiving a file called HTML file, hypertext markup language, and it is a script. That is it. It is a script. And so every time my browser gets codes that are inside there, it knows how to handle those codes. It's going to do something different. Okay. And so if it is an image or some other content, those are called assets. Right? So if it's an asset that is located on the remote on the remote server, that remote server will send those assets and it will get them off of its storage array, wherever it is, and it will send them to the browser. If those assets are links to a remote content, same thing. The browser's going to process it, parse it, and it's going to make a request to a remote server for some photograph, picture, and uh, and then you have a web page in your browser. If there is some code there, like some JavaScript, my browser would request that code just like any other asset. And that's why we use the term asset, because we are talking about an object. Okay, what I do with those words, by the way, is I take them and they're words that allow me to be more general about while being very specific. So if I had if I had a file like that was an image file, okay, that's a specific thing. It's an image, which indicates that it has certain properties, but it's general enough that you would have to ask me what type of image. You wouldn't necessarily have to, but I mean, if you needed to know for a reason, you would have to ask me what type of image is it? Okay, that would be like me saying, well, give me an apple. Okay, well if all I have is one apple, one kind of apple, I'm just going to give you what I have. But if I have 5 different kinds, then I might ask you, well, what kind of apple would you like? You want a Macintosh apple, or a Gala apple, or a Granny Smith apple, or a Cosmic Crisp? Okay, those are really good. All right, just like candy. Okay, give me Cosmic Crisp, please. All right, so I can choose what I like, right? Okay, so that's a different specific type. So images are the same way. Um, if I just say, well, it's an image, that's one thing. But if it's a different type or I need a certain type, I can tell you. So when I want to talk about something in a general way, I can say a couple different things. I can say that it's an asset, and that word asset indicates that it's something that actually adds value or goes along with the web page, as opposed to maybe the idea of the word object. An object is a more computer science general term, which could indicate an object in memory, an object in storage, an object in a list. All these things are objects. An object could be something in a structure in memory that has properties, but an image isn't that way. An image or an asset generally indicates some externally stored file or externally referenced file that I can get. So a hyperlink to a video that's embedded in my website is an asset. Okay. Picture, asset. All right. So here's the question about static websites and what they are and what they do. And again, remember, the website it's an HTML file that I get. And so that's what I need. In order to show a website, I need an HTML file. And so at a minimum, a static website is that HTML file. And if I want to reference some images or something else, I have to link to those to some other place on the web. The idea of a static website in the S3 storage is specifically saying to the fact that I cannot or I do not have a requirement to modify the contents of the web page based on user input. So that would be classified as a dynamic website. So, for example, a common website that's used will use what's called a CMS. A CMS is a set of software that gets loaded onto the server. An example of this would be WordPress. WordPress is a very common CMS system that gets loaded on. And everything that I do in my web page creation design is centered around putting the data in that CMS format, the database that's used, whether it doesn't matter what database engine you use, right? But the database engine that's used for that is done in the format that the CMS system needs. Now, WordPress isn't the only CMS content management system, not the only one. And there's other software that gets used in the background. So what happens is you may need to generate some pages. So you might have a scripting language that actually does the interpolation for you, right? If I take some data that I need, and I have some code of the way I want to display it, and I put those two together, and I come out with an output, I could use PHP. PHP is a scripting language that's often used to generate that content. Lua is another script. JavaScript is another script. I could combine any of those. And then Adobe has its own whole suite of scripts that it can generate and use. But so any of those can be done, but when you cross over into the boundary of needing your web server to do some work, okay, to process some things, to put some things together, whether it's from a database query user input, HTML file, and then some mixing. Okay, if you're going to be a mixologist and create content like you see on most sites, you cannot use a static website. Because every time the user makes a page request, the server is going to have to process some information and return a different result for each user. So you think about Amazon, there's no way I could run Amazon as a static website. It would not work. The only way that I could do this would be not Amazon, but the only way I could do some semblance of interaction is if I had a static website and inside the HTML file was a link to a remote database, and I could query that. And then I could store the contents in my user's browser, which means that it's not saved anywhere, right? So that's the whole thing is I could do all these workarounds, right, to get something that seems dynamic with static. Anyway, static is good when you have pages that don't change, like you're making here in this slab. Is a static site, and it's cheap. Okay, when the transfer is nil, you don't have to pay a monthly fee. I mean, you do a little bit. It's like, I mean, can you have a website for $1? Yeah, that's the cool part, right? My website that I do, and I use a virtual server in Amazon, and I actually have a web server, and I use the CMS system and everything. I pay $4 a month for it. It's cheap, and it works great. The only problem I have with it, and this is the one problem I have, is that the SSL certificate, because it's done via Let's Encrypt, which is an open platform. It has to be renewed every 90 days. And I forget to do that sometimes. So there's an automatic renewal that you can set up and run, and it will automatically run it. But the problem is that sometimes that thing needs to be adjusted for whatever reason, and I forget to do it. So what I would actually, if I use my website more, I would buy an SSL certificate for $150 or $160 or something, whatever it costs. About that. About 160. Some people charge 185. But I would buy one of those just so I could have it for a whole year without maybe trying to remember how to redo my certificates every time. I got it every time that thing expires. Like, I should do it before it expires because that's the easy way. But the hard way is after it expires, and I don't want to do it. Okay, but that's something I just do every time. Okay, so it's one day I'm going to write down my steps. But so that's kind of the difference between a static and a dynamic website. And there's lots and lots and lots and lots of reasons to have a static website. Lots of reasons. And Amazon is a great place to host one because you can actually buy a content delivery service, CDN, for Amazon, and they will push your data out to the edge and store it in the S3. And so, I mean, it is a cheap option to put some stuff out there on the web. So really, all you really have is you have a domain name, which that can be relatively cheap, $4 to $5 a year, maybe $20 a year, depending on where you go. So you got your domain name, and your domain name automatically gives you the ability to forward requests over to your web server. You forward that over to Amazon. S3 runs your web hosting, okay, which is just a static set of assets that get pulled. And then you pay, if you wanted to do CDN, content delivery network, where your site is pushed to the edge, then you're not paying the transfer fees from S3 every time someone hits your website. Effectively, what's happening is the edge server pulls it from the cache, puts it out there on the edge, so I'm getting a much cheaper rate. Putting my website. I mean, it's cheap. Gosh, if you had static websites and you wanted to actually do that as a side gig, right? As long as you didn't have people wanting to change their websites, right? You could actually charge. I mean, if Amazon's going to charge you $2 a month to do that with a static website, and you made one for somebody, you could be charging for the design and development of that, and then charge a monthly rate for the management. And I wouldn't say a whole bunch, but I mean, you could actually get a pretty decent margin of income just by doing static sites. And I mean, yeah, everybody has one, Wix, that's what those are. Those are static sites for the most part. And so those services are out there, but do you get somebody who doesn't want to deal with it? Do you get them in there? You have a personal touch. You're a human being. You say, hey, I use Amazon for my stuff, but I know how to set all that up. So you have the reliability of AWS. You have the superb ability of your design engineer, me, and then that's you. And then basically you're selling websites, right? So think about this, right? All the people on Facebook who think Facebook is the best marketing tool ever don't really have websites. That's a great place to start because not everybody uses Facebook. I hate Facebook personally. I don't use it. And so, but there are people who think that is the only, because, we used to have the yellow pages. And so everybody who had a landline phone and who had a business had an advertising medium in the phone book. And so I could go and look in the yellow pages and I could find all the places in town that did certain things. Well, we don't have that anymore. We don't have it. It just doesn't exist. The phone books are small, the yellow pages are nothing, and people rely on social media to do marketing. But not everybody uses every social media platform. So that is a perfect opportunity to go through and find out people who are on Facebook but don't have good web pages. You talk to them and say, look, you need a static website. It's a good business model. I would do it. Okay, fantastic. Maybe later. But all of you guys, go for it. Go sell some websites. That's it. Static website, right? So there's a lot of different software I can use on the dynamic side. I can choose from a whole range of platforms and tools, and I mean, there's a whole bunch of moving parts in that. But static is an HTML file, maybe a JavaScript file, maybe some graphics, all that gets stored in a folder, and it gets pushed to the edge if you use an edge caching service, and then you just pay for the storage. So pretty amazing, actually. Anyway, hope that helped you guys. Enjoy your labs. Talk to you tomorrow.